Have you ever stopped and wondered how a forest, or a desert, or even just a tiny pond, how it all works? Well, it's a story. A really epic one, actually. It's a story about energy, connection, and this incredible, intricate flow of life that powers our entire planet. All right, let's get right into it.
So let's start with a puzzle. What on earth could a single little pond possibly have in common with the vast, massive ocean? I mean, they seem like completely different worlds, right? But believe it or not, they run on the exact same set of rules. And by the end of this, you're going to see exactly what I mean.
To figure that out, we've got to start with the basics. So first up, what even is an ecosystem? We're going to unpack these fundamental building blocks of nature.
Okay, so what's an ecosystem? It's actually super simple when you boil it down. It's just two main things interacting. You've got the living parts, the biotic components, plants, animals, fungi, and then you have the non-living physical parts, the abiotic stuff like water, dirt, and sunlight. When they all interact, they work together like a single cohesive machine.
And man, are these machines everywhere. On land, you've got your terrestrial ecosystems. Think forests, grasslands, deserts. And in the water, you've got aquatic ones, from that tiny little pond we mentioned all the way up to the entire ocean. They come in all shapes and sizes, but the operating system, it's the same.
So how do these systems actually run? What's the fuel? Well, it all comes down to energy. Let's move on to see where it all starts, with the power of producers. This is literally where the entire journey of energy for life begins.
For pretty much every ecosystem on this planet, the ultimate power source is the sun. But here's the kicker, the really wild part. Of all the sunlight that plants can actually use for photosynthesis, they only manage to capture a tiny, tiny fraction of it, somewhere between 2 and 10%. That little sliver of energy is what supports basically all life on Earth.
Now, the speed at which plants turn that sunlight into actual stuff, leaves, stems, roots, is called primary productivity. Think of it like the ecosystem's total income. And we talk about it in two ways. There's gross primary productivity, or GPP, and then there's net primary productivity, or NPP.
This is just simple budgeting. GPP is the total amount of energy the plant captures. That's its gross income. But just like us, the plant has to spend some of that energy just to stay alive. That's respiration, the R. So what's left over after those expenses? That's NPP, the net primary productivity. And that is the energy that's actually available for everyone else to eat.
So how much are we talking about? Globally, it's about 170 billion tons of this stuff a year. Now get this, oceans cover 70% of the planet, but they only contribute about 55 billion of those tons. The vast majority of our planet's energy budget is being generated right here on land.
Okay, so the producers have captured all this energy. Now what? Where does it go? Well, that brings us to our next stop, following the food chain. This is all about how that energy gets passed around from one organism to the next.
It's a pretty simple ladder. At the very bottom, you've got the producers, the plants making their own food. One level up, you've got the primary consumers, the herbivores that eat those plants. And then, of course, they get eaten by the secondary consumers, the carnivores. And at the very top of the chain, you might find tertiary consumers, the big apex predators.
Now here's a neat concept. If you could somehow take a snapshot and weigh all the living stuff at any one of these levels, all the plants, or all the rabbits, that total mass is called the standing crop. It's the total biomass of that level in that area at that moment.
Here's the most important part of this whole section. The transfer of energy between these levels is, well, it's terrible. It's super inefficient. Only about 10% of the energy from one level actually makes it to the next. The other 90% is lost, mostly as heat. This 10% rule is like a fundamental law of ecology, a sort of energy tax at every step.
So energy flows one way, up the chain, and then it's basically gone. But what about all the physical stuff? The nutrients that are locked up in all those plants and animals. That's where nature's amazing cleanup crew comes in. Let's take a look at nature's recycling system. So when something dies, it becomes what scientists call detritus. And as you can see here, that's when the decomposers, think fungi and bacteria, get to work. They break down all that dead organic matter and return those precious nutrients back into the soil, where, you guessed it, the plants can use them all over again. It's the circle of life.
And this isn't just one simple step. It's a whole process. First, little critters like earthworms break everything into smaller bits. That's fragmentation.
Then, water washes out some nutrients, leaching. Catabolism is when the bacteria and fungi do the heavy chemical lifting. That leads to humification, creating that dark, rich stuff in the soil called humus. And finally, mineralization breaks that down even further, releasing the raw nutrients for plants to slurp up.
Okay, let's tie this all together. That 10% energy rule we talked about, it has a huge consequence. It creates a very specific structure in every single ecosystem, a structure we can actually see. So for our final section, let's look at the pyramid of life.
This whole pyramid idea immediately helps us answer a really good question. Why are big, fierce predators like a tiger or a great white shark so rare compared to, say, deer or plankton?
The answer is right here, in the pyramid of biomass. Because you lose 90% of the energy at each step up, each level can only support about 10% of the mass of the level below it. You need a giant base of producers to support a smaller group of herbivores, which can then only support an even tinier group of carnivores. There's just not enough energy left at the top to support a lot of predators.
Simple enough, right? The pyramid's always wide at the bottom and pointy at the top. Except… hold on a second. What about the ocean?
This is where things get a little weird, in a cool way. In a lot of marine ecosystems, the pyramid of biomass is actually inverted. It's upside down. The total weight of the producers, all that microscopic phytoplankton, is often way less than the total weight of the consumers, the fish and krill that eat them. It's a total paradox. How can a tiny amount of producers support a massive amount of consumers?
But here it is, the one unbreakable rule. While pyramids of number or biomass can get funky and even flip upside down, the pyramid of energy is always upright. Always. You can't cheat the laws of physics. Because of that energy tax, energy is always lost as it moves up the food chain, period. That is the one constant, from the smallest pond to the biggest ocean.
Which brings this whole thing right back to you. Think about what you ate for lunch today. Was it a salad? Boom, you are a primary consumer. A hamburger? You just acted as a secondary consumer. What if you ate some big tuna that ate a smaller fish, that ate tiny shrimp, that ate phytoplankton? How many levels deep did your lunch just take you? It's a pretty cool question that connects you and me directly to this massive, incredible flow of life.